and welcome to Cafe. Today I'm going to show you how to set up your coffee machines. When you receive your machines, you're going to be getting them in 4 boxes. The first large box, this is going to be the coffee machine itself. The second large box, this is your base cabinet that you're going to be using. You will also receive a third box, which will have your pump kit in it, and then the fourth box will have your coin mechanism in it. When you're unboxing your coffee machine, you want to make sure to keep the packaging and keep the straps intact, just in case you need to transport your machine later on. It's fairly simple to do. Simply grab the strap at the top and on the side, and then just slide it off of each of the corners. When you're done with all the packaging, you just lift off the top of the lid. The box itself is in 2 pieces, and it just slides right off of your machine. The tools you're going to need are a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, a box cutter or utility knife, a 10mm socket, a pair of needle nose wire cutters, and a pair of pliers. In a separate package included with your shipment is what's known as an up key. This up key has all of the program settings that you're going to need for your coffee machines. Put this in a very safe place, and we'll come back to this later on during the setup. After you've unboxed the machine, you want to locate the machine key. Simply pull down the cardboard tray that surrounds the machine, open up your cup door, and inside you will locate the machine key. Take that key, put it into the lock on the side, and you want to open up both doors. Inside, you will find your label kit. You want to remove the black drip tray, and then you want to take out the blue waste bin. Inside there, you will find 2 bags with your remaining components. Take them out. Inside your blue waste bin, you're going to find the following parts. You're going to find covers for the beverage labels on the front of your machine. You're going to find feet for a tabletop operation. You're not going to need this, so you can take these and move them off to the side. You're going to find extra gaskets for your spare part kit. You're going to find a yellow service key. You'll see 2 stir stick weights, a longer one and a shorter one. You don't need the shorter one. Take that one and move that one off to the side. You will also find 4 feet for your base cabinet. And inside your label kit, you will find your beverage labels for the front of the machine, and you will find your operations manual. So the next step is to remove the base cabinet from the box. Simply cut open the box very carefully. Open the flaps, and it's helpful to tilt the box forward, and then you can just slide the cabinet right out. With the base cabinet out of the box, now you want to attach the feet. And remember, the feet you found inside your blue waste bin inside the machine. Simply grab the feet, thread them all the way up to the top, because the height can be adjusted later on. Now that you have your feet attached, let's open up the cabinet. The key to the cabinet is going to be the same as the key to the machine. When you open up the door, you will notice that there is space for your coin mechanism right here. There's also the cash box, which has its own separate set of keys. Inside the bottom of the cabinet, there is space for your water jug. There is a wastewater container as well. There is a hose that goes into the waste container. Remove the float and also put that into the waste container. At the bottom of the cabinet, you'll notice 2 electrical connections. These are for your float. We'll connect those a little bit later on. In the top of the cabinet, you want to remove the white waste bin, because inside there are components that you're going to need. Inside your white waste bin, you will find a small white box. Inside that box, you will find an MDB card and your MDB cable. Inside the bin, you will also find a blue coffee chute. There's 4 pins. These you are going to use to connect your machine to your base cabinet. There's 2 locking screws, and there are some extra components for your spare part kit. There are zip ties, a T-valve, and extra hoses. You will also find an extension bracket and 3 mounting screws for that bracket. So now we're going to attach the extension bracket to the back of the base cabinet. To do that, you're going to need the extension bracket, your screwdriver, and your 3 mounting screws. Simply line up the extension bracket with the holes that are pre-drilled in the back of the base cabinet, and just quickly attach it. Once it's attached, your extension bracket should look like this. With the extension bracket attached, now we're going to install the pump kit. Inside your pump kit box, you will find your pump kit assembly. There are 2 brown hoses. The one with nothing on the end will attach to the reservoir inside the back of the machine. The other one, with the one-way check valve, will go into the water source inside the base cabinet. You will also find a few other components. There are 2 zip ties. You will find an extra hose clamp that you're not going to need at this point. Put that aside in your spare parts kit. There are 3 white hose clamps, and then you will also find 3 mounting screws. At this point, you want to take the mounting screws, thread them loosely 1 or 2 times into the top of the assembly. Now that you've prepared your pump assembly, it's time to attach it to the base cabinet. To do that, you want to remove the waste jug. Take out your float, place it on the top shelf, unhook the handle from the hook, and move the waste jug off to the side. When you're installing your pump assembly, you'll want to make sure that you don't pinch any electrical or hose connections from the back of the assembly to the back of the base cabinet. Simply take your assembly, line it up with the pre-drilled keyholes that are on the base shelf, and slide it towards the back of the base cabinet. Just double check to make sure that your connections haven't been pinched. At that point, take your screwdriver and you want to tighten up the mounting screws so that the pump assembly is tight against the shelf. When you're finished with that, you then want to take all the remaining connections, just put them inside the cabinet for now, and we'll show you what to do with them as we proceed with the setup. To remove the machine from the skid, you're going to need your 10mm socket wrench. There are 4 bolts on the bottom that hold the machine to the skid, 2 on each side. To remove those bolts, you want to make sure the machine is flat on an even surface. Simply take your socket wrench and begin removing the bolts. Once you remove the bolts and the machine is free from the skid, make sure you keep those for future transportation use. Now that the machine is off the skid, it's time to place the pins that hold the machine into the base cabinet in place. But before we do that, there are 2 access covers on the bottom of the machine that we want to remove. When the lock is facing outwards, the first access cover you will see is located here in the corner. The second one is located more centrally in the middle of the machine. Each access cover is held in place with 2 screws. You want to use your screwdriver and remove those screws. The access covers will stay inside the machine, but we'll get at those later. Once the access covers are loose, you want to use your pins that you found in your white waste bin, and you want to put them into the 4 threads that are on the outside corners of the machine. There is 2 extra threads in the middle, but that's for the locking screws. We'll get to that in a little bit. You want to hand tighten these pins into the corners of the machine and then gently flip the machine over so you can do the 2 on the other side. It's almost time to put the machine on top of the base cabinet. But before you do, there's a few things that I want to show you. Located on top of the base cabinet, you'll notice that there's 4 pre-drilled holes. That's where the pins that are in the corners of the machine are going to drop into the base cabinet. Once the machine is placed, you're then going to take the locking bolts, which you found inside your white waste bin, and from underneath inside, you're then going to secure the base cabinet to the machine. But before we lift the machine up and put it on, I just want to quickly point out that it's now time to take off the protective cover that surrounds your base cabinet. Now that your machine is on top of the base cabinet, it's time to remove the access cover. Simply open up the machine, lift up on the top door, and gently pull open the sugar door from the side. In the center of the machine, you will notice a round circular disc. That's the access cover. Take that and put that in your spare parts kit. Next, you want to pull out the black drain tray. You want to remove the tape and any protective covering that may be on it. When you flip the tray over, you'll notice the drain hole here on the side. That drain hole lines up with your funnel, your tube, and ultimately your waste container. In order for the machine to function, you want to make sure that you're drilling a hole in this tray. You will need a 5mm drill bit in order to do so. Before you do, simply press down on the tabs on the side of the tray, lift off the top cover, and now you can safely drill your hole. Now that you've drilled the hole in your drain tray and reinstalled it, it's time to put in your coffee chute. This just simply slides into the hole that was created by removing the access cover. With the door open, it's also a good opportunity to walk you around the inside of the machine a little bit. Over here on the door, you'll see your cup canister. Up here is your bean hopper. This is where the coffee beans will be placed into. This is what's called your brew group. This is where the coffee beans are ground and the machine actually makes the coffee. Across the top here, you'll notice some canisters. You have one for your milk, your chocolate, and your flavored cappuccinos. Over here on the door, you have a canister for your sugar. In your label kit, you were supplied labels for these canisters. Now's a good time to take a second and go ahead and put these labels onto the canisters. So now we've removed the first access cover from the machine. Now it's time to remove the second. This one, though, we have to access through the back of the machine. So your first step is going to be to use your needle nose wire cutters and cut the zip tie very carefully that holds the power cord in place. From there, you're going to use your screwdriver and remove the 3 screws that are holding the back panel in place. Once you've removed the screws, simply lift up on the back cover and place off to the side. Now down here in the bottom of the corner is where you'll find the second access cover. It's a little black rectangle. Remove that, place that off to the side for your spare parts kit. From there, we're going to ask you to find your MDB card. We're going to walk through this very important step and we're going to show you where and how this is going to be installed. Your MDB card is going to be installed into the circuit board on the bottom left-hand side of your machine. To ensure proper installation, make sure this black component is facing up on the card. This will allow the contact pins on the back of the card to align properly with the sockets inside the machine. When you're ready, align these white posts with the 4 holes that are on the circuit board. Place your MDB card in those 4 holes. Once you're confident that the posts are aligned with the holes and the contact pins are aligned with the sockets, gently and firmly apply pressure to each of the posts and snap the card in. So now it's time to start connecting the machine. So here we are back at the front, and you'll notice that we have 2 power cables, one for the pump and one for the float, and then we have 2 hoses. One of the hoses has a check valve on it at the end of it. This is the hose that goes from your water jug up into your machine. We don't need this right now, so just place that off to the side. With the other hose with the plain end, you want to feed that up through the back of the shelf. There's a service cutout hole that's there, and you want to take this all the way up through the service hole in the back of the machine. Being very careful to ensure that the hose doesn't get kinked. Once that's done, you want to do that with the other 2 power cables. Once everything is properly installed, this is what it should look like. So now we've fed that hose and the power cables through. Now it's time to also feed through your MDB cable. This is the one that came in with the white box with the flat black end. This is the piece that you want to put up through the service hole from the machine and the base cabinet. You don't need to go through the shelf this time. When you're finished, you want to leave the end of the cable just rolled up on top of the shelf. Now that you run the connections from the base cabinet into the machine, it's time to start hooking them up. The first one we're going to connect is your MDB cable. That's the black cable with the flat black connector at the end. The MDB system is what connects your machine to your payment system. To install this, run the cable in behind the hoses at the top. Tuck the cable neatly up, and you're going to install the flat black connector into the MDB card that we previously connected. Ensure that the blue wire is on the right-hand side. Line it up with the connector pins and simply slide it in. Now that we've connected the MDB cable, it's time to connect the water supply line from the base cabinet to the reservoir in the back of the machine. To do that, we need to disconnect the hose that attaches to the reservoir on the far right-hand side. Simply press on the clamp, slide it down on the hose, and gently pull down. Remove the clamp off of this hose and attach it to the water supply line coming from the base cabinet. Push the hose onto the reservoir tank where you removed the previous hose and slide the clamp up. Since this hose is only necessary when there's a direct intake line, you can push this hose down further into the assembly because we won't be needing it. At this time, I'd like to take a moment and reference this hose right here. This is your reservoir drain hose. It should always be in an upright position with the clamp closed. The only time that you ever need to open this is if there's a need to move the machine. Simply slide the clamp into the open position, drain the reservoir. When you're completing your setup, always make sure the clamp is closed and the hose is in an upright position at the side. After connecting the water supply line, it's now time to connect the power from the pump assembly to the machine. In order to do that, we have to access the power connections inside behind this regulator. It will need to be removed. You will need your screwdriver in order to remove these two screws here and here. Simply undo the screws and remove the screws. To remove the regulator, simply push it back and up and pull it out through the access hole. On the back side of the regulator, you will notice a black rubber cover. Slide that cover off to expose the two connections. Simply pull those connections loose from the regulator. These connections need to come out of this black rubber cover. Slide them through the black access hole at the back, one at a time. Once the connections are clear, you can place the black rubber cover back onto the regulator. Now, we're going to connect the pump assembly to the connections from the regulator. Simply pull off the adapter and put this in a safe place. At the side of the regulator housing, you will notice there is a cutout hole. These connections need to be slid through that cutout hole one at a time. Once the power cables have been pulled through the housing, place the regulator back inside. This will allow easier access to connect the power cables. Take your adapter, place them back onto the ends of the power cables coming from the pump assembly. Take your connections that come from the regulator and attach them to the other side. In this particular case, polarity doesn't matter and the colors don't need to match up. Take your green wire, which is your ground, and attach it to the yellow and green wire coming from the regulator. Once your connections are complete, tuck them back inside and reattach the screws to the regulator. The last connection we have is for your float. Your float hangs inside your waste container, which is located in your base cabinet. It's a safety feature that's built in the machine to prevent further operation should this container get too full. The nice thing about it is that if you're servicing your machine regularly, it's not going to be a problem for you. Now, this is a step that we can choose to do now, or you can perform later. If you decide to do this later on, simply take this connection, coil it up loosely, and just tuck it inside your machine. If you do decide to do that operation right now, we're going to take a moment and we're going to show you how. To connect the float, we need to access the connections that are on the back wall of the machine here. They're held in place with a zip tie. And in order to cut off that zip tie, we need to do that from the front of the machine. So we're now going to take a quick look and show you how that can be done. So now we're going to access the zip tie that holds the cables in place. To do that, we're going to remove the brew group. Simply grab the handle on the blue cover, lift up, and pull out. Behind that cover is the actual brew group where the coffee making takes place. To remove this, we want to remove the green hose fitting by just turning it counterclockwise and pulling out. Over here to the right of the brew group, there's a green lever. Put your finger inside there, push that green lever up, and remove the brew group. Once the brew group is removed, you will see two zip ties on the back wall. We want to cut this one on the left-hand side closest to the outside wall. You will need your needle nose wire cutters. Simply carefully reach in there and give it a snip. So you've cut your zip tie. Now it's time to reinstall your brew group. To make sure that the orientation is correct, you want to look at the back of the brew group and you will notice that there are two holes for the posts inside the machine and one hole for the blue gear. To make sure these are lined up properly, there's a green lever on the right-hand side. You want to lift that up as you're installing the brew group and aligning the posts and the gear. Once the brew group is securely in place, make sure you connect your green hose fitting back to the top. Simply install and turn clockwise. Once the fitting is installed, the cover can go back in simply by reversing the procedure. Slide in and push down. Your brew group is installed. So we're now at the back of the machine. Now you need to carefully reach in along the right-hand side and grab the connections that you made loose by cutting the zip tie. Pulling them forward, you'll be able to see that there are two more zip ties that need to be cut in order to fully release the connections. When cutting the zip ties, be sure not to cut any other wires. With your zip ties cut, simply reach inside the machine, grab the wires, and pull them down along the side of the machine. You will notice that there is a pink jumper connecting the two cables. Remove that pink jumper and, grabbing your float connections, connect them matching the colors. Once connected, simply tuck it nice and neat just along the side of the machine. Your float's now connected. So with all the connections in place in the back of the machine, now it's time to come back to the front and complete the setup of the base cabinet. You can see there are a few components here, but it's going to be very quick and simple to do. We're going to start with the payment system. This will attach right here on the inside of the door. And you will notice that there are 3 screws that need to be threaded out in order for the payment system to be attached using the teardrop holes on the back. Simply bring the screws out far enough, align them with the holes, and slide the payment system into place. You'll want to make sure that your cable is not caught in behind your payment system. Using this cable right here, you'll want to bring forward your MDB cable. The white and the black connections are the 2 that you're going to use. Simply snap them together. The other 2 systems aren't necessary for your machine to operate. They are for different payment systems. And the nice thing about this is there's no programming for this at all. The machine takes care of everything for you. Once your cables are connected, tuck them into the back, and then install your white waste bin on the top shelf. Now it's time to install the water. Using a large jug of water that you can get from any current supplier, simply open it up and install your intake hose. Make sure it slides all the way down into the bottom. With your water, you want to carefully lift it up and push it all the way into the back corner, making sure that the hose is not caught behind the jug at all. Your last step is to reinstall your waste jug. The float goes inside, waste jug tucks in underneath, and the handle just sits on the hook. Your base cabinet is now complete. You also want to make sure that the coin chute is properly aligned with the top of the coin acceptor. To make sure it's in the proper place, simply depress the lever at the top and slide the chute back and forth until it's lined up.